Hi everyone, welcome to the final episode of the PropTech Ramble of the year. I'm Sam Hall, Head of Technology at Metricus. It's my pleasure to be joined today by Nick Durkin, Field CTO at Harness, and Stephen Line, VP and GM for EMEA, also at Harness. We're going to be talking about something a little bit different this week. Normally we've been talking about property technologies quite directly. This is going to be more focused on, as well as PropTech, how do you actually get software, that we're all using to the cloud? How do you actually do this whole complex delivery stuff? Or maybe it's actually not that complex. Anyway, so first of all, it'd be great, Nick, if you introduce yourself.
Sure. From there. Nick Durkin, Field CTO, Harness. It was employee number 9. Been there quite a while. And before that, came from the large financial institutions, built a lot of intellectual property around fraud prevention, mobile authentication, data aggregation, but ultimately started life as a sysadmin. Yeah. So been in the trenches many times.
You felt the pain of delivering software.
I've literally been that guy who gets blamed for everything. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like it's burned down, it's your fault.
It literally, it must be. I had to prove my innocence many, many times.
Yeah. Stephen.
And hi, and thank you firstly for inviting us on this season finale. Appreciate it. And so Stephen Line, I'm the VP and GM here in EMEA. Haven't been in Harness as long as Nick, which is why Nick has that amazing vest and I don't. However, I do look forward to getting mine in the future when I've earned the right. So I've been in Harness for about a year, and my responsibilities are to help grow the business across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Previously, I was at Cloudera for a long time, doing the same role, and IBM and SaaS, and so I've been in technology companies for most of my working career. So it's great to spend a little bit of time here with you today.
Great. Well, I guess probably the best place to start is just to give a brief overview for everyone, in a nutshell, how Harness works.
Sure.
What does it do? How do we deliver value to clients?
Yeah, great question. So Harness started life as continuous delivery as a service, and we think about CI and CD, so continuous integration being really getting code to artifact, and then we think about continuous delivery. We think about it being from artifact to customer. This is
and
really
for everyone, what is an artifact?
Yeah, so if you think about an artifact, so any type of software you want to deploy, so think about that jar, the war, the container, the really anything that you deploy on even your laptop could be the artifact to install, and it's really about automating that portion when it becomes something you can deploy or something you can install, and really automating that for a business to make sure that it gets to production and it gets to your customers in a meaningful way so they can actually use that software.
So the artifact is kind of like the version, I guess, of that particular application, whatever it may be.
Yep, that's exactly it. And then we broaden that to actually handle the whole software delivery lifecycle. So from the moment the developer's writing code, all the way through to deploying that to the different servers, and even understanding the costs that are involved with the cloud costs and where you're deploying it. So really the entire spectrum of the software delivery lifecycle. Really here to help throughout the whole process.
Yeah. So I think that certainly for us, one of the things that's quite interesting is not just how do you get software to the cloud system, but also what happens if you need to do you generally have sort of 3, I guess, major clusters or deployments. You'll have dev, QA, beta, production.
Yep.
And one of the problems you often have is that people don't remember to turn stuff off. Most developers are working 8 hours a day, I hope. And then they leave them on for another, 16 hours. So you are still paying for that. If you're running that on AWS or Azure or GCP, that means that 2/3 of your costs are just chucking money out the window.
Massive amount of waste.
Yeah.
And really this is, when you think about Harness through this whole platform, it's designed to automate all the pieces that any of your engineers hate, which would be even that, understanding when people are coming to the office, when they're leaving. Let the machine learning understand what that looks like so it can do it for you automatically. When your folks leave the office, let's automatically bring those down. When they come back in and try to use the services, let's bring them up for you. So you're really cutting 60-70% of that cost just by literally auto-stopping all of the technologies that you don't need to have running during the evening or during off hours or during that random holiday that pops up.
Yeah.
Right? Massive amount of cost savings for customers.
And it makes it easier as well to surface it to your finance teams. Because often, cloud stuff sounds all scary, right? It sounds like we're talking about a dark art about containers and artifacts. It's not that it is complicated, but the finance of it's relatively easy. so you can get people involved in it.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and we've been talking quite a bit today about confidence and the ability to give people in different roles confidence to do that role well and to do it exceptionally well. And so whether you're the CFO and having confidence that you are controlling the costs within an organization, responsibly, but not impacting the revenue growth of that organization, and making sure that it's running as effectively and as efficiently as it can. If you're in a developer role, you want to just be able to develop and not worry about those things in the back end and know that they're taken care of. And if we think about that through the lens of Harness, what we're trying to do and what we're enabling our customers to do is to go fast. So deploy software faster, go through those iterations, but stay safe. So know that if something breaks, we've got you. It's okay. Ideally, we catch it before it goes into production. But if it does go into production, that happens. And we can roll you back, we can roll you forward, but we keep you safe. And we're doing that with lots of visibility, granular visibility from an audit perspective. So again, whatever role you have in the organization, you know that you can get the data. And we talk a lot about data, and then people provide the context to that data. So I think that's really important. And then, of course, as you were just highlighting, as you deploy faster, then typically those costs go up. So how do we just make sure we're optimizing that spend responsibly, but still supporting the goals of the business?
Yeah.
The way I'd even put it is we make it easy for people to do the right thing. We make it hard for them to do the wrong thing. And if you think about it, the vision of going to the cloud sounds great, but only if you leverage it appropriately. So if you're using the resources when you need them, then it's cost effective. If you leave them on 24/7, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess so for, could you give like a brief overview of the difference? I think often AI ML, people say it literally like that. They're like AI ML, but they're two completely different things, really. I mean, they're in the same sort of arena, but they're quite, different approaches, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just give a brief overview of what that is from your perspective.
I think a lot of people actually say machine learning and they mean like a standard deviation.
Yeah,
like
they mean
math. Like they literally mean math. And the problem is
that they talk about algorithms.
Yeah, that's not machine learning. So machine learning, whether it's supervised or unsupervised, and we use both, right? So this might be something like natural language processing, where we can allow the machine to know what English language looks like and actually pull data out of it and really understand. Or where you can actually give it feedback. So you can actually give feedback to say, hey, here's neural feedback. Is this good? And start allowing it to learn, and that's supervised machine learning. But again, this are taking a massive stack of multiple algorithms together that allow really a computer to start thinking like a human. The problem is that a lot of times people will say AI and they actually mean machine learning models. Yeah. And it's not until the machine's truly thinking and growing by itself that it becomes artificial intelligence. And so oftentimes we use the term neural networks. And this is where you design and build and train models that actually then can learn on their own. And so when we talk about AI, it's really about giving context, but then allowing the machine itself to continually learn and update that same context. So the same way that a child, right, you start playing with a toy and it can't fit the square in the circle, now it starts sticking the circle. Well, as you learn, the brain continues to figure, okay, the circle goes here. Same with that would be artificial intelligence, where it's actually starting to learn on its own. I'm not having to train. Yeah. And this is where we use a massive amount of machine learning to do what your best engineers do, and a little bit of AI. But that little bit of AI makes the difference of whether we give you false positives or not, because we can start thinking like things like your best engineers do.
The analogy I think I often use is like, I don't know if you have this in America, but when you go to the dentist and you've got like those things where you put the coin at the top and it kind of goes down like little tracks, and then it goes into one of the holes, and you can kind of, you can put it in one, it'll go over here, you go over here. AI to me, or machine learning, is more like if that is getting retrained constantly so that you're getting the result and the outcome at the bottom that you want. But it's the world's most complicated coin drop machine.
and Nick, why do our customers care about ML and AI? Like it's, as you highlighted, Sam, it's kind of the buzzwords. Everybody says they've got some ML and AI in their tech solution is going to revolutionize your life. But in the space of software delivery, why do our customers care, Nick, about ML and AI?
It's actually the same reason that we cared about mechanical muscle in the early 1900s. So we used to do everything with horse, and we used, everything. We would travel through the streets in horses. We would farm with them, and then we built mechanical muscle, which made all of our jobs easier. Right? We took away the worst parts of the jobs, and the reality is that's exactly what we're doing here. So with our AI and ML, I'm taking away all of the worst part of an engineer's job. No one loves babysitting a deployment and making sure it works. No one loves waiting for tests to run. No one loves, like you said, turning off that infrastructure and making sure it's on, and having somebody come into the office late now to turn it back on for them. taking care of that for them using artificial intelligence and ML,
Mhm.
it literally removes the worst parts of their job. We're not replacing people, right? I'm literally replacing the worst parts of their job so they can go do what they're best at. Empower them to do what they're best at.
And for for high performing, DevOps teams, how often would you think that they could, how quickly can you start to deploy code? Like how quickly can you start to push new features to people?
Sure. I think, with Harness specifically, we'll go and actually install our software with a customer or a prospect. And in a few hours, you've gone from literally nothing to deploying new code instantly. And then beyond that, from your second deployment forward, you're starting to use the AI to think about it like your best engineer. So now you're gaining value on your second deployment. So it's quick time to value because you don't have to script things. You don't have to write things. You don't have to do the hard stuff. Harness handles that for you. And then after you start deploying, we'll handle the hard bits that no one wants to deal with.
And once you get to that sort of state where you're now pushing features essentially constantly, how do you make sure that you can keep your operational teams, your product teams, your marketing teams all actually still synchronized essentially with your development team? How do you make sure you're not getting features that are, maybe something new that no one recognizes?
Absolutely. So this brings into what we call feature flagging, and some folks will call it database toggles or feature management. And it's really the ability to control after software is deployed. Maybe not all the features are required by a specific customer or a specific region or a specific geo. And so I want to make sure that when we do it, the operations teams are ready for it and we can align. So yes, the software is deployed, but you can separately then control features. So now I can say I want this feature for a small subset, and I want the ops team to be aware that it's coming. We can make sure it's there, and then we can verify that it comes out. And so now it doesn't have to be large, complex deployments to give your customers the features they want. It can literally be a toggle for a specific subset, and it can still follow that same automation and that same verification. So the intention is we want to make it easier and easier for the engineers to get that code base out, that feature out, but do it when it's valuable for the business, right? Not when it can affect possible outcomes and when we have to worry about it during deployment time, but when it's beneficial for the business.
Yeah, and I guess that also, it helps push the power of those feature releases more towards the people who are actually doing it on a daily basis. Because let's be honest, DevOps people tend to be sitting at a computer somewhere else, not dealing with customers, and hopefully not anyway. Not dealing with customers, dealing with how to get code to production, but that's what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about how do I get this into my customer's hands? How do I get it into ops hands properly? So if you have a feature flagging system, such as Harness, you could, push that to product people, push it to marketing people.
Yep.
So it's a lot more controlled. And it's just, having used it, it is a super easy interface. So, I'm probably showing my hand a bit there, but, it's super easy interface. So you can, actually, you don't need like a huge amount of training to say, let's release a new version of I'll use an example from us. Like we released a new wellness panel going from version 1 to version 2. But of course, you want to test version 2 for a while you're still having version 1. We actually did all that testing, giving the powers to product. Like that was not involving developers at all.
They can choose, and that's it. You let the customers decide when they want it.
Yeah. Right.
You let the teams enable it when they need to. And then, even then, I call it a blast radius. You automatically limit the blast radius. Hey, I'm purposely I'm going to be purposeful with that change with a customer. We're going to make the decision to try it. If we like it, now let's expand it. Let's give it to more, and let's bring it out to the. And if it doesn't work, again, let's get it back to where it was before you started, and you don't have to write any code.
Yeah.
And that's, if you're using a system that takes a massive amount of scripting and coding and complexity, you've just added an entirely new code base. Why would you do that? It should make your life easier.
Yeah.
Right. That's the intention. Truly.
I think the exciting thing from a business impact perspective is, you asked about like how do you make sure that the teams are in sync? I actually think it's a key opportunity and a great opportunity for the teams to get strong together. Because as organizations grow, fast growing startups or large enterprises, often 1 degree of separation becomes significant over time. Whereas actually, and if you were to go and interview people in different functions, there might be some frustration with it takes too long to do this, or it takes too long to do this. But actually, if you can iterate safely, so you're delivering incremental business value to your customers in a controlled way. So, marketing should be good with that. finance should be good with that, risk, all of those functions should actually buy into that process, and you can go through with that quicker, which means you can innovate faster. And if you can innovate faster, you can leave your competition behind. And back to the point I made earlier about each function should have the confidence in the process, which should bring people together for a common purpose, which of course is to move fast without breaking things and drive better value for your customers in the marketplace.
I think the best thing for us was that, the code takes as long as code takes. Like deploying it faster doesn't speed up how quickly you write code. It just speeds up how quickly you can get it to people. But the thing that was great for us with speeding up how fast we got it there and how quickly we could test it in production was that it all took 3 months, which is exactly as long as it's ever taken. But we actually got the first version out after a month. We were able to start actually making UX and UI changes way ahead of when we normally would have done, which would have started previously after 3 months. So then, you have to iterate from 3 months onward. What actually happened is we got that feedback in after a month and released the finished thing after 3. But the code still took 3 months, and that's, but we
it's
could
that
get
iteration
it to people.
time, though, right?
Yeah.
It's that time of iteration that you can
pull it backward.
compress, really. And that's, I think, a lot of the things we thought is uncompressible. And the reality is there's a lot that we can compress if we're able to test it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the benefit.
Yeah, and it often sounds scary, I think, to people when you say things like testing in production, because it sounds like, I remember we did a conference and someone asked like, so you're deploying bad code, and I was like, no. Well, no, I'm not saying that we're deploying like half-hashed code. What I'm saying is that we're pushing things that are, we wouldn't release it as a generally available feature, but we want people to use it. We want people to test it. We want people to, figure out whether this is something that they want to do. And for our scenario, we could not have a beta setup with the breadth of data that we get from, sensors coming in, because it would cost a fortune. Going back to the cost stuff, it would just cost us so much money to actually have a totally exact prod setup to beta. You can't do that.
Yeah.
But that's why sometimes when you go from beta to prod, things happen that are weird. Things are different in prod from beta, no matter what you do.
This is actually how we even came up to offer our feature flagging to our customers, is because we've been feature flagging everything that we build to our customers.
Yeah.
If you ask me, hey, Nick, we need this feature, I would give it to you first. It's not that to your point, it's not unbaked. It's just, it's to your design, and we'd iterate on it and make sure it's what you needed. And then I could release it to a larger audience of people that would like it. And once we had enough people that would say, okay, this is what we want, now we can make it generally available to the public.
Yep.
And that's the idea of feature flagging. And really all of our customers said, we want to do what you do in your software deployments every day. Can you please offer that solution for us? And we said, why not?
And feedback is a gift. So the faster you can go through that feedback loop, with a specific customer, then I think you can make it better for all customers. I think that's really important design principle. But on that point of testing, we're trying to take that upstream as well, right, Nick, in terms of some of the things we've done around test intelligence. So I think it's useful just to incorporate into the conversation. It's not just when you've gone into production and using feature management to toggle those on and off, but actually trying to make that more efficient earlier in the process as well. What's your perspective?
No,
poking you a little bit.
Poking me a little bit, because it's something I'm passionate about. Because if I were to change the gas cap on your car, you wouldn't expect me to go check every electrical switch and every electrical system in the vehicle after I did so. But the reality is, when we go change one line of code today, we run through every single test, which is, it's crazy.
It takes like 3 hours, right?
And I drink a lot of coffee, and I go out for lunch, and great, and hopefully it worked. But the reality is, what if we could be more intelligent about it, right? Use AI and ML to actually understand, hey, look, I don't need to run 75% of these tests because what I changed does not affect it. Really get into only testing we need. And then more importantly, what about those tests that commonly fail? Like, let's test those first. Like, fail fast. If we're going to fail, let's fail in the first 5 minutes, not 3 hours later. What if we change the test, create a new one? And so again, it's thinking about it in the way that you and I would if we were thinking about it like humans, but applying that modeling to everything you do in the software delivery lifecycle.
I guess it also comes back to what we said before about, confidence is that, I think a lot of people, you do all of your tests because you're not confident that actually you'll catch, you might have, it's the sort of, what's the picture you always see on like Stack Overflow?
The fire in the background.
The fire in the background, but also like, the piece of wood that no one ever touches because it was holding up the house. And so you're like, why have you never touched that code? It's like, well, someone put it there and I don't know what it does, so I've just left it. And some of that, like actually, if you were able to just test more confidently, not have to run through hours and hours of tests because you're not wanting to change this very small thing, that would enable you to upgrade your architecture, move more quickly, iterate.
Absolutely.
So we've spoken about like a few things, like in terms of the trends across EMEA. What has been the sort of uptake? Do people tend to take everything? They take a set of solutions. Like, how does it tend to work?
I think it depends where they are. And one of the things that we're very conscious of is solving the entire software delivery lifecycle journey.
Yeah.
But recognizing that people are at different stages in that, and therefore we're a platform company but modular in its approach. And so if your challenge right now is around getting the artifact to the customer, again, use the word customer deliberately, not production, then we solve that through something we call continuous delivery. If people are still trying to, or they've solved that particular problem and they're thinking about the cloud cost, and we were talking about that earlier, then we have some conversations around that. What we're seeing is that more and more of our customers are adding more of our capability as they're seeing the value. Often we'll be starting to, this is the business problem we're trying to solve right now. How can Harness solve that? We recognize you've got value in lots of these other areas, and that's great. But right now we just need to solve for that problem. That said, particularly with startups, we're seeing more and more, and of course Europe has an amazing startup scene now, and people like Sequoia and Earlybird have all got growing teams in the region, which is great. And Atomic.
They opened the London office about a year ago, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Money is coming.
And somebody was giving me a data point. I can't remember what it's now. 37 unicorns in the Nordics or something like that. Phenomenal growth in European tech startups, which is fantastic to see. And so we're seeing them kind of. If you think about a startup, they want to keep growing. They don't want to plateau and then grow again. And that's not just people, that's technology as well. And so we're seeing more of them put in something like Harness from the earlier stages across the platform, so that they can just smooth out that growth curve and not have to have any of those plateaus as they scale. So we're very excited about that, and especially around that tech startup, which of course agitates the larger enterprises even more because they've got to cope with that disruption in their marketplace. And so obviously they move a little bit slower and they're more likely to solve a specific pain problem they've got at the moment before extending that. So I guess some of the younger, more agile companies can take more of the capability because they're able to do so. Some of the larger enterprises need to solve specific business pains as they really reinvigorate their innovation and get back that flexibility and agility in the marketplace.
Yeah, taking away that pain of worrying about how quickly you can scale your CI/CD pipeline. Like how quickly can you get stuff to customers? How can you increase the number of regions that you're deploying to? It's such a key problem. As I know as a startup, that's something that we have to worry about. I don't want to worry about. How do you then also make sure you control that cost? It's different problems come at different times.
And the resourcing, we talk about there being circa 27 million software developers in the world. It doesn't matter whether that's a factually accurate statement. Directionally, there's a lot, but nowhere near enough. Right? And so everybody's competing for scarcity of human resources, and therefore something like Harness to be able to, you described it as kind of doing some of the things that developers don't want to do. Actually, that's attractive for candidates in the recruitment cycle as well. It's like, hey, if you can take away all of the dull stuff that doesn't really interest me, and also not only that, but help me get my code to the customer. I almost said production, to the customer faster. That's hugely rewarding as a developer.
Yeah.
I'm having more impact for my company, which is what I want to do, right? Because that's why I joined in the first place. So I think those aspects are really, really critical, especially in an environment where everybody's competing for developer talent. So if you can enable developers to do the things that they're passionate about, along with all of the other things that people care about, when evaluating opportunities, I think that's a plus. Yeah.
I think certainly in Europe, well, it's a market I know best as well, is the compliance stuff. Taking that pain away is just, if you try and build a CI/CD solution yourself and build in audit logs and things like that, anyone who's ever tried it, don't try it, don't do it.
Everyone tries it in the beginning because they'll go and extend their CI tool. They'll take their script runner and try to build it. They'll grab open source
have a Google
tools.
Doc.
Yeah, have a Google Doc.
Forgets.
Hey, but the problem is that doesn't scale. It doesn't meet your compliance. Doesn't meet your regulatory. Doesn't meet the audit. And so you want to use a tool that's literally designed from the ground up to meet every single audit and regulatory and compliance requirement that you have. Because now you know, and this is that confidence piece that we talked about. Yeah. If you can guarantee that they're following the appropriate measures, they're doing the right tests, they're meeting the right security requirements, so all those quality gates, security gates are met, now you can confidently understand that what they're deploying meets your requirements.
Yeah.
And that gives you that ability. And with audit, now you can have the reports out to the auditors, to the compliance folks. To do that yourself, look, anyone can do it, and a lot of companies have. Why would you want to do it yourself? And then why would you want to do it again when you move, say, from on-premise to the cloud?
Yeah.
Why write it entirely from scratch?
I think it's super important within sort of the property technology industry that we're in, because they're primarily, we were saying before, major enterprises tend to be combo, like building owner occupiers, people who tend to have massive security teams where you've got to talk about how you, like, not just are you getting code to production, but how do you get it there? Like, what are the audit logs that you have? Can you show me your audit logs? Can you give me a system that tells me exactly what it is that you're deploying at what time? Is there a big red button that says no code today? All of those things that, to be honest, you want to be focusing, well, I want to be focusing on how we make money, which is we're a property technology business, not a CI/CD business. So I don't want to build that because other people are spending the money to build that. You've got how many employees now?
So yeah,
a terrifying number.
A terrifying number. Yeah, we're about 540 employees right now.
We don't have 540 CI/CD developers,
and 250 of them are actual developers.
Yeah.
So we have 250 people that live, eat, and breathe this, right? To do this for folks. So you don't have to have those 7, 8, 9, 10 folks to do it. Like, allow us to do it for you. And to that point, I think you said it best, which is, like, again, empower you guys to do what you're best at. Don't waste the time. Your stock price will not go up because you have built a really cool CI/CD or a development platform.
Unless we completely pivot like Slack, then
Yeah, I think the key
but that's
point
highly
there,
unlikely. That story is unique.
I think the key point there is it's not that you couldn't do it,
No.
but it's just not your business. So therefore, why would you do it? Because all you're doing then is diluting your core value, and your core value is being a PropTech company. So be good, really excel at that, and then use third-party tools like Harness to help you do software delivery. Right?
Yeah.
So,
And it's a similar story that we tell, because actually, if you look at the way you can do property technology, then really you could go and buy one of these, a sensor that we work with, and you could integrate it to a database, and you can write queries. You can do that. Like, that's fine. But I mean, that means you have to go and do that. You're now taking away from whatever your business is. You're figuring it all out, and you're not taking advantage of this pool of knowledge that you can utilize.
and you're increasing risk as well.
Yeah,
Because
increasing
the people who
risk
write
is-
that, to your point, they create a Google Doc that never ever gets updated, but the software does get updated, and then the business scales, and that person leaves, or those people leave, and then you've created a vacuum of knowledge that, to your point, then you end up with the piece of wood that's propping up the house, quite literally, and then where do you go from there?
Yeah. And one thing that I've noticed with our clients, I don't know whether you've seen this, is a sort of we often go through transitions, I think, in compute technology, I suppose, of like private cloud, public cloud, private cloud, public cloud. And we seem, from what I've seen, to be a bit people going back towards private cloud again. Have you seen that? Like, how do you help? Do you help? I mean, I guess at the end of the day, a cloud service is a cloud service from your perspective.
Well, and that's the thing. A cloud service is a cloud service from our perspective, but we actually empower the people that need to care about it.
Yeah.
So developers shouldn't have to care whether they're deploying on premise or they're deploying to cloud 1 today, cloud 2 tomorrow. They shouldn't have to care. And so if you leverage something like Harness, now the operations folks or the sysadmin folks who actually know and care about the infrastructure can help define that accordingly, so that now, again, the engineer doesn't have to care. It can be Amazon today, Google tomorrow, Azure the next, and then back on premise the following. And the genuine piece here is that you shouldn't have to care. And your engineer shouldn't have to know the networking complexities, the security complexities of each one of those. It should be handled by the teams that know it. And I've said it before, but you wouldn't hire, a plumber to go to your electrical work.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't make sense. But we're asking developers to know networking and security and the cloud and let's empower the people that do it best. Give them all the right areas to do this, and then let's allow tooling to actually handle making sure it gets to the right place in the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And so to us at Harness, we don't care whether it's on-premise or whether it's a cloud. It doesn't matter to us, and nor should it matter to your engineers. That's the nirvana.
Yeah, it's like cognitive load piece, right? You can't focus on everything because it's hard. You could, but you won't do anything well.
And even if you could do it all, you're not going to be the best in your game.
No.
Michael Jordan was not the best baseball player, right? He was
pretty good.
He was pretty good, but he was
Yeah. He wasn't Michael Jordan.
He wasn't the Michael
of
Jordan of baseball, but he was of basketball because he spent that time and that effort. So let's allow folks to do the same.
Yeah, I think you're trying to build in you're trying to mitigate your risk. Right? Yeah. And therefore, by abstracting it from that, like whether it's cloud 1, 2, or 3, let's leave it at that. And as your business develops, changes, you acquire companies who may be on a different cloud provider. You're likely to have at least 2, if not 3. You've still got to be able to take, move the levers accordingly, and you need to have the visibility to know when to move those levers. Mm-hmm. Back to that visibility, which gives you the confidence to make those decisions. And of course, nobody wants to be locked in, one way or another these days. Everybody's got kind of lots of stories of that over the years.
Yeah. And as like another, fast-growing business, what have been your kind of challenges as teams growing very quickly, which inevitably means you need more office space? What have been the challenges surrounding that?
That's a great question. I think that, firstly, we're, like many organizations, competing for talent. I think we've got a great brand, and I think we're doing some fun stuff that people want to be associated with, so that's good. From an office perspective, it's an environment that needs to continue to pivot faster. And what I mean by that statement is that as we're growing, we need flexibility, but we need a different style of office space. So if you take the number of desks that we need today, we would need a disproportionate number of meeting rooms to the number of desks, vis-a-vis what's typically available on the market today.
And that seems to have rapidly changed over the last 2 years.
100%. We don't want any individual offices, not interested, not needed. But what we do need is lots of hybrid spaces for people to come together and interact. Right? We need lots of hybrid meeting rooms so we can have conversations like the one we're having today, where we're in real life, which is fantastic. But also, people can join remotely. Like the school that my girls are at, all the classrooms are hybrid. And they've been hybrid way before COVID, and it's the headmaster's, quite forward thinking and thinks that's the future, which is fantastic, and more sustainable. So it's really challenging because landlords want long-term, unflexible leases, and organisations that are fast-growing like Harness, which are great for landlords if they build that relationship, want flexibility, lots of meeting rooms, shorter leases because we're growing really, really quickly and not to be locked in. Yeah. So I think that's part of the challenge. And then, of course, understanding how our usage is changing, which kind of ties into a little bit of your business.
Yeah, I mean, similarly to some of the ways you've spoken about how getting data about how stuff is deployed, that is kind of what we try and do for buildings. We're trying to help people to actually get information about how their desk spaces are being used or how the meeting room is being utilized, because we found with a lot of clients that they basically just had missized meeting rooms. Like sometimes you actually have more than enough meeting space, but that is just being inappropriately divided. So you can, putting in dividers in spaces isn't that hard usually, unless you've got a landlord who's difficult, which sometimes happens. So we can help people to be like, look, you've got this 12-person meeting room, but actually 80% of the time it's being used by 30% of people. And people tend to know this, but they can't prove it back to their CEO. So the CEO never actually wants to spend the money to redo things. They're like, well, but sometimes you do use it, right? It's like, yeah, but most of the time this is what we need. And so we can give people the data back to say, look, this is what we need so that we can actually function better as a business. And then maybe you use one of the many, many, many flexible office spaces that you can just go and hire a meeting room for 20 people when you need it, but you don't need that most of the time.
So this is the cloud for offices. I mean, if you think about it, right? When I need that overflow, I've got my on-premise data center, and I need my overflow in the cloud. And I see this, but I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a room, and I got the largest conference room because every other small one was booked. It's me and 2 people.
Yep.
Yeah.
In what should host 20. To your point, those spaces, understanding the data, right? It's the only way we can make proper decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And without it, I think to your point, I'm coming with a gripe to the boss without any actionable information.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have it, how do you make a business case?
Yeah.
And it's the data kind of informs the story and people tell a story, because as you described, people have their perception, like their gut, and their perception is their reality regardless, and that's why the data is so important. And of course, people will be protective. Like, I don't want to give up my 20-person meeting room. 3 times a year I have 20 people in that meeting room, and I've got a great big digital wall, and this is amazing. And I've got whiteboards everywhere. I know we're all very passionate about whiteboards.
We do love whiteboards.
We might have to save that for a future session dedicated to the future of whiteboarding. But I think the data is critical.
Yeah.
To help inform that, and for us, as we continue to scale and grow, what is it that we actually need? And at the moment, it's more gut-based, candidly.
And the kind of next level that we then do is to try and sort of enrich some of that data with more data points. So we will put things like indoor air quality sensors to those meeting rooms, so that then you can also, as well as just knowing how many people are there, you can look at maybe how is CO2 trending, because as CO2 goes up, your cognitive performance goes down. So you actually start to get to a point where you're making worse and worse decisions. So you need to be able to understand that, feed it back again, feedback loop into something like an HVAC system. So you pump more fresh air in, and now you can start to, have more productive meetings, like the dream of everyone wants.
This is continuously delivering for buildings.
It's continuous delivery for buildings.
It is. It genuinely is. Taking the data and using the insights, and then automatically, not just taking the insights and getting recommendations, but taking action. And I think when we think about whether it's software delivery, whether it's in the buildings, that's the intention. It's not just to get the data. The data is great.
Yeah.
It's not even just gleaning insights off data. The only time it's actually truly valuable is that we can take action on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important piece of it.
And I think that's right. Sorry. I think that's super valid, because we would talk all the time about unless it impacts the customer positively. Let's just be very clear. Unless it impacts the customer positively, then you shouldn't do it. And in the same way as that providing the data is great, but then you've got to be able to take action, and that's where I think smart buildings have a great future, and there's lots to do. I would definitely. We've all been in very long meetings. Now we can debate whether the meeting should have been as long, but the ability to still make really sound decisions at the end of that meeting as well as at the beginning. Where do I sign up for that?
Yeah, and I think that the place where we're going is that, again, similar to you guys, we've sort of dealt with things where you can look in the past. So audit logs. How do you look at data that you've had? How were your meeting rooms performing? We then moved into what's the present? What are the data points now, and how can I change things right now? Where we're going is, the future. How can you now look at data that maybe predict what's coming? That's a little bit of sort of the AI ML play, where maybe we can start to incorporate indoor air quality data, weather data, traffic data, all of these different inputs in order to do things like expected occupancy. Because especially in the sort of modern world now, where people want to go into an office when it's less busy, maybe, because they want to understand what's the expected occupancy on a Tuesday. We are starting to build some models that will help you to understand what your occupancy will look like given these conditions, which, I think once you can tie together past, present, and future, that's sort of how you got a whole picture of what your building is doing, looks like, and
I think that the confidence thing plays very much in there as well, because given that many of these decisions are in property are significant investment decisions, whether you own or lease the building it doesn't matter. We're still talking about large sums of money, and so therefore understanding how you can sweat that asset effectively, and again, you don't like the risk of giving up your 20-person your conference room is okay, as long as you know it's going to be there when you need it, and back to that confidence, and I guess that data gives people that.
Yes, I mean, there are some, in terms of sweating the asset, then actually there's so many just purely capital benefits of actually doing this, because you can get accreditation basically to see how your space is performing. So we work with a company quite a lot called Air Rated, that basically rate how good your air is in a space, and it has been proven that will increase the value of your building, because people now want to actually work in buildings that,
have good air.
Like, it sounds so, it sounds simple and basic, right? But it's, if you can at least prove it, and you got a certification that shows that this is a good space to be in, people are willing to pay for that. And so, yeah, we can sort of help facilitate those things.
Sounds like you guys have got a thriving business ahead of you in that growth as well, right? We all care more about those things all the time.
Yeah. Cool. Right. Okay. So I think Chloe has prepared some quick fire questions now. These are the ones that I
brace.
I don't think you actually saw these ones before you came.
No, didn't prepare for these ones.
Yeah. I mean, these ones are relatively easy. All right. I guess we'll go with Nick first. Like, what was your first job?
So I was a Windows sysadmin.
Yeah.
And so I was literally taking care of like desktops at a large medical company.
Mm-hmm.
So it was literally a help desk. I was answering phones and playing video games when I wasn't. I shouldn't say that, but I think
you'd be on the statute of limitations now. It's fine.
Lots of fixing desktops, lots of fixing laptops, and literally started life there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Pretty much one of my first jobs was setting up Windows machines for that was basically a sewage company.
Yeah.
And I had to rewrite how to install Windows, because their instructions, that was not how you installed Windows. I was like, how can you have instructions on how to install something that doesn't install something? Like, it's a set of steps.
This should be easy.
Yeah.
But,
And what about you, Stephen?
I'm not sure whether a paper round counts, but that was the first point in time when I
you got paid.
I got paid. Outside of obviously doing chores around the house. I guess my first full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for a DOS-based. Yes, I just said it. I know, it's hard to believe. A DOS-based fleet management software company.
Mm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Back in the day. My first job was a paper round, but my first full-time job was for a DOS-based fleet management software company. Suffice to say, they're not still around.
We'll start with you this time, Stephen. When/where do you feel you're most productive?
Running. Yeah, I think it's my thinking time.
Mm.
And so people who've worked with me for a long time will always know when I've been for a run, because I'll get back and there'll just be this flurry of, hey, I've had this idea. It normally starts like that, and then there's normally an emoji that comes back, slightly scared, slightly nervous.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah.
So definitely when I'm running.
Our chief of staff actually is the same thing.
Yeah.
She also, you need big problems to be fixed, goes for a run.
I'm going to go for a run. That's awesome. Mine's a little different. I'd say it'd be right here.
Yeah.
In a meeting room, on a whiteboard, when we can take the hardest problems and break them down to the why.
Yeah.
And really whiteboard and understand, like, that's where I think I tend to do some of my best work, which is why, again, so passionate about the whiteboard.
Yeah. There we go.
It
Got to make it happen.
That's the one thing that was really hard. Like I said, BC. So before COVID, we could do this on a whiteboard, but during was, it's a little harder.
It was like doing it when you've got a load of faces staring at you, and you're like trying to get people involved.
I'm trying to write this, and it's just when you can sit there back and forth and both have a Sharpie or both have a dry erase marker and go at it and really get to ideas. I think that's probably something more solid.
I agree. My team always have lots on how many minutes can I get into a meeting before I stand up and start drawing. I can't
believe I haven't already.
Yeah.
But hey, and just to everybody who's watching now, if you have a whiteboard pen that is finished, please put it in the bin. Sorry, just please put it in the bin. We're huge whiteboard fans, as you can tell, but please, if your whiteboard pen's finished, put it in the bin. Sorry, come on, couldn't help myself.
And this was actually the one question I did warn you about. But other than harness is not allowed.
Harness not allowed.
What's the favorite place you've worked at?
Sure. I worked at a company called Early Warning, and they actually secure all the financial institutions in the United States. And so talk about being passionate about what you do. You literally are preventing fraud. You're keeping people's bank accounts safe. Mm. And so but the amount of data you're looking at, you're looking at every part and piece of an individual, including their cellular data, the information from their passports, from their IDs, and then all their banking. And so you have this responsibility, but with that, you can do amazing things. And so I learned so much there of what has become, my career. It was a company called Early Warning. They're owned by the banks, owned by every large bank in the States, but I loved it. It was hard to leave, let's put it that way.
There's so many cool software paradigms that have come from that world, like all the basically event-based stuff that we do. It's all from there. It's so cool.
Yeah, we were doing.
I could talk about that for another 2 hours.
Season 3.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah. We'll have to do next season. We'll do that.
Yeah. And what do I do?
I'm going to give 2. That's okay.
That's fine. There's no rules.
Okay, perfect. Kind of in the tech world, I would probably say outside of harness, obviously, would be Cloudera. I mean, I joined as employee number 7 in Europe, and when I left, we were about 800 people in Europe, and we built the European business stuff for customers in 65 countries, and it was fun, and we went through the raises and the IPO and mergers and stuff like that. So that was a fun and a hugely learning experience. But really, the most exciting thing about that was finally the opportunity for organizations to get value out of their data in a timely fashion. Like people have talked about Customer 360 for decades and decades and decades. It was just too expensive and took too long, and we didn't know whether it was going to be meaningful.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to do that and see the impact of that on customers was huge. Bring data sets together cost effectively and get some insights you can then take action on was just massive. So that would be from a tech perspective outside of harness, and we're having some fun in harness. That's great, and we'll look to see where that goes over the next few years. Also, a few years ago, I decided to take some time out of corporate life, and I went sailing for work.
Yeah.
So so that was the best place I've worked. Would be on a sailboat in the middle of the Atlantic. I would say was probably.
So I already know the answer to this question, which is when you're not working, how do you spend your time? So I already know that one. But
just sailing
for the audience.
and so it's definitely sailing and doing fun stuff with the family.
Yeah. And how about you, Nick?
I love traveling, and actually I feel kind of criminal. So in 2020, we went and saw 44 of the 50 United States with my family. We took our RV.
Which ones missed out?
So I missed the southern bit because they were having hurricanes, and I don't want to be one of those mobile homes that gets picked up in a hurricane. I figured that'd be a bad piece, but sans that, I mean, we missed that in Alaska, which.
Different set of challenges.
Different set of challenges, but no, love traveling, seeing things. It's one of my passions is getting out and about. And, I mean, heck, even here in the weekend, I'm gonna go get in a car and just drive the countryside. So absolutely.
And this one is normally a question where I think I already know what you'll say. So do you think all buildings should be smart?
Absolutely, like no question. The fact that we live in a day and age where we're not using the amount of IoT data that we can use and actually take action on is massive. And the fact that we're not is just wasted money. It's waste. And so doing anything inefficiently is waste. And so do it, if you're going to do it efficiently. And I think, it has to be something, and we have to want it as a people, but there's no reason it shouldn't.
I agree 100%. And of course, from a sustainability perspective, like it's, and I think from an employer who, I think has an accountability and a responsibility, like from a buildings perspective, that, and I think that's again a differentiator for recruitment, because we have so much technology available to us if we used it in the right way at the right time. And smart buildings are a great example of where we can have a meaningful impact from an environmental perspective that we need to run much faster than we are currently.
I mean, and I'm going to even tack on that again. I mean, think about it, like just the fact that we now have, smart switches that'll turn the lights off to, again, save energy. These are the types of things we should be doing in all facets of our life. We talk about shutting down servers, right? We should not be running these massive workloads and all these things when they don't need to be. And so that efficiency piece, it crosses everywhere, not just your light switches and not just your air conditioning, but through everything. I mean, it's a finite set of resources that we're burning. And let's burn as little of them as even.
And again, as long as people have got the confidence that it's going to be there when they need it, right? I walk into the room and the lights come on as a simple example. It's all good.
We're good.
Yeah. So I was out with my grandparents last night, and they were asking me, it was like, what do you think the next sort of technical shift will be? What's the next technological thing? And I was like, if I knew that, then I'd be making. But I actually think that in terms of a paradigm shift, then actually we've been in a phase for the last 100 years or more where it's all been more, 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 more. Everything's about being, more resources, bigger buildings, more office space, everything. I think that really we've got to go through a bit of a phase of how we utilize the stuff we've already got better. Like, how do we actually have a little bit less, but still get similar lifestyles that we're now used to, and it's very hard to take things away from people. But how do you just make it just a little bit more efficient? Even if it's just a little bit.
1% efficiency gain in this space, dramatically changes markets.
Yeah. Cumulative effect.
Yeah.
It's very significant.
So finally, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self? Always a tough one.
I mean, it's so
and that
easy.
doesn't need to be business, it can be anything. Like free reign.
Respect your elders. Too easy, sorry.
That's way too easy.
Yeah. I think that, and it's a little bit of a cliche, but I think, I've got two daughters.
Yeah.
And so for me, is that you can do anything you want to if you put your mind to it. So I'm a big believer in diversity and inclusion. Nobody has the best IP on ideas or the right to anything. Like it should be earned, and we'll be better if we collaborate. And so for me, it would be the have the confidence to do what you believe is the right thing. Have a strong moral compass and never give up. As I say to my kids, you just can't do it yet.
Yeah.
Really important part of that. So I think that, and we see change. It's just not changed fast enough from that perspective. So I think believe in what's right and you can achieve it.
I love that. My kids, we say Durkin's never quit, and that's so to your point. But I think there are two things.
Sounds like something from Game of Thrones,
right? That's it. The things that I always I wish I would have known younger. One was treat everyone like a friend. And this not just in work and business, but just everyone like a friend. And I think you can learn so much about people. You can gain so much from that. And then even in the corporate environment, one thing I learned, and I learned it from my father, but I learned it too late in life, which is treat everyone like the CEO. If you treat everyone from the front desk all the way through with the same respect that you would the CEO, whenever your name's spoken, guaranteed it will be in positive light. And I wish I would have heard that one earlier. I might have made some of those, I call them CLMs, those career-limiting moves at some point in time that I probably wouldn't have if I had followed those.
That's a great advice.
Yeah,
we're all suddenly reflecting on those comments that we might have made, or silly things that we've done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
What about you on that one?
What advice would I give?
Yeah, what advice do you give yourself?
Flipping it back
Why
around.
not?
It's the season finale. I mean, come on.
Yeah, true.
You were ready for that one.
I wasn't.
I know.
I think it would be more patient. I'm in some ways it helps you being relatively impatient to get where you want to go. Sometimes it's helpful. However, most of the time you don't need to be impatient. What will be will be. You just need to, similar to what you were saying, you gotta believe in yourself, but be patient, focus on what you're trying to do, and don't just try and sprint all the time because it's tiring.
Can I build on that just briefly? I think added to that, which is tied to patience for me, is understanding, and so I'd say to my kids, I think, or my younger self, generally people come to a conversation with positive intent.
Yeah.
And if somebody says no, it might be that they've got different information to you. And rather than be impatient and determine this is the answer, and I'm gonna keep going at it until you agree with me. Actually understanding the person's perspective and that they're at the table with positive intent. And I think often that's overlooked, which I mention it because I think it's tied to patience a little bit, because you've determined an outcome in your mind, and then someone said no, and it's like, but why not?
And it can be hard though, because sometimes actually it's a really good way of getting stuff done. Actually being impatient, moving things as quickly as possible. If you early on, if that is successful for you,
you'll follow that pattern.
You'll follow that pattern.
And that can be that, and that's the risk.
That's risky.
That can work in small groups, but as things get larger and your impact gets bigger, I can use a bit of that patience myself.
And as we say,
You're
move
never
fast and
gonna
don't
go
break things.
That's it. That's it.
And I think that's probably a good note. Yeah. So anyway, thank you guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed the conversation. I had a great time. All the episodes of both season 1, season 2 are on Spotify and YouTube. So if anyone wants to go and listen to previous ones, then they're all there. And we will be, I think, returning sometime around January, February kind of time. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Thanks guys again.
Absolutely.
And we'll
Thanks for having us. And we gave you a sneak preview to some topics that are coming up.
Yeah.
Don't forget about the whiteboard pens.
see you all soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.